Hey everyone, thanks for watching this tutorial on how to play Arthurianess, which is a two-player strategy deck building card game that's inspired by the legend of King Arthur. You can go to our website at www.arthurianess.ca and download all the PDF card files for free, which you can then print out, cut out, and play. Please note you'll also need the 32 pieces from any regular chess set and the dice shown here. And a big thanks to everyone who's made or will make a donation of any size, which helps us more than I can say to keep this project going and provide support to those who like the game with informative content, future expansions, and online engagement. And just as a small token of our sincere appreciation, we email donors a bunch, if not all, of the card files from the basic expansion, depending on the amount. And you can find out all the details on our website. So once again, thanks so much. Here's a gameplay walkthrough to show you all the rules and mechanics. I'm to the left and Savannah's to the right. As the winner of the coin toss, Savannah decided to play white and be player 2, and you'll see why this is important later on. The first stage is recruitment. This is where each player drafts their champions and rooks to construct their deck. And as we can see here, we've laid out all the pawn, bishop, knight, and rook deployments for us to do our selection. Deployments are the cards you play that enable you to, just as the name implies, deploy your champions and rooks to the realm. At the top of the deployment is the name of the champion or castle the card deploys when played. To the left is the karma requirement. In other words, the number of karma a player needs to play that deployment. To the right is the champion or castle's power when deployed. The text includes the instructions as to what happens when and or after the deployment is played, and at the bottom we credit the artist's name and the source of the image. Now, as for what's written below the illustration, that's where you'll find the deployment's class, which in this case is a knight, and to the right is the nobility point worth of the champion or rook that card deploys. Here's why that number is important. At the end of the game, when each player is calculating their nobility point total, they add up the total nobility point worth of all the champions and rooks they've captured throughout the game and still have in captivity, and then add up that sum to their total tally of accumulated nobility points. Here's an example. It's the end of the game and player 1 has in captivity both of the rival's bishops, one of their rooks, and their king. Each bishop is worth 3 nobility points, the rook is worth 4, and the king 5, which combined adds up to 15. As a result, player 1 adds 15 to their nobility point total. Okay, back to the recruitment stage. As player 1, I choose first from the pawn deployments, which in this case is Taliesin, and we alternate until all those cards are gone. Next, player 2 now chooses first from the bishop deployments, and we alternate. Once those are all gone, player 1 now has the first pick of the knight deployments. We do the same process until finally player 2 chooses first among the rook deployments, and so on. Each player then takes one of the 2 queen deployments. Both are identical, so it doesn't matter which, and the same goes for the 2 king deployments. And that concludes the recruitment stage of the game as well as our deck construction. Let's go over setting up the game. As you can see, Savannah has her reserve of champions and rooks represented by chess miniatures, and I have mine. Between us, we've put the fates, challenges, and blessings into the respective piles, shuffled and face down, as well from the expansion, the gifts of providence, also face down. In addition, the expansion includes 3 mythic gifts of providence or mythics and 7 events. Please note, you can choose to play just the basic set, as the expansion is completely optional. Each player has their 7 destiny dice with a few additional ones on hand for certain situations, and their 2 10-sided dice to count their nobility point totals, and another 2 10-sided dice to count the total combined power of the champions and rooks they deployed to the realm. Last, you also need a 10-sided die to indicate what round it is, and a 6-sided die that's used to determine the karma reward for each player in any given turn. So a little bit more about how the karma reward die works. Player 1 rolls the die the first turn of every round, and Player 2 the second turn, to determine the karma reward each player is allotted for that turn. The only exception is during the last round of the game, each of the 2 turns both players are automatically rewarded 10 karma each, which is called a wild turn. So here's an example. If 3 is rolled, then that's the total karma each player has during that turn. If 4 is the outcome, then that's the total, and so on if 5 or 6 is the result. Now, if 2 is rolled, then the player who rolled the die has the choice of whether to keep the karma reward at 2 for the turn or roll again. And finally, if 1 is the result of the roll, then a wild turn ensues, as we see in the final round of the game. One thing to note, whenever a player wins the contest during a wild turn, they earn an additional +3 nobility points, but we'll show you how contests work throughout our playthrough. If you have all 3 mythics, choose one of them randomly without either player looking at it, and shuffle that card into the Gift of Providence pile. Whichever player is lucky enough to draw that mythic, they'll receive a powerful ability, advantage, or reward of some kind, much like the Fates, as we'll see later on. And last, player 1 chooses one event which they believe will most strongly complement their deck, followed by player 2. And we do this one more time. Once this is done, each player puts their 2 chosen events into play on their side. And these events occur when specific scenarios transpire during the game, and in so doing, give the player who chose them a tactical advantage or reward. Before we begin to play, once again, you may choose to download the free one-sided card files available on our website, print them out on regular paper, cut them out, and then put the card cutouts into color-coordinated sleeves in front of cards from another game that don't have much value to you. Or you may want to download the free two-sided card files and print them out, front and back, in color and on high-quality paper, and we strongly recommend synthetic. Yet another option is to find a local print shop that can produce the cards professionally and you avoid shipping costs. All you have to do is email them the PDFs and get a quote to make sure they can produce the basic set and expansion cards if you get those files at an affordable price. And don't forget to ask them to make the edges rounded. We now move on to stage 3. The game begins. After both players have shuffled their decks and drawn exactly 6 cards, they have the option to either keep their hand as is or mulligan, which means they can choose and set aside up to 2 cards they find are less desired, draw new cards from their deck equal to the number of those they removed, and then reshuffle the cards they mulliganed into their deck. Once this is done, turn 1 of round 1 commences. The first turn step is card drawing, and here's how that works. At the start of every turn, each player draws cards from their respective deck, and the number of cards they draw is determined by the number of those they have in their hand. Here's a breakdown. If you have less than 6 cards in your hand, then you draw until you have that many. So let's say you have 3 cards in your hand, as shown here. In that case, you would draw exactly 3 cards from your deck so that you meet your prescribed total of 6. Now, if you have exactly 6 or 7 cards in your hand, then during your card draw step, you would draw exactly 1. So, as we see here, imagine you're holding these 6 cards. During your card draw step, you would draw, as you probably guessed, exactly 1. And finally, if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, then you don't draw any cards during your card draw step. So here's a question. What happens if you don't have enough cards left in your deck to draw the prescribed number of cards during your card draw step? The answer, you convert your discard pile into your deck and draw however many cards are required. Okay, allow me to demonstrate. In this scenario, it's the beginning of my draw step. I have, as you can see, 2 cards in my hand. There are only 2 cards remaining in my deck, and all the others that had been in my deck were played. So they're now fanned out in that face-up pile to my left, which is my discard pile. So I draw the last 2 remaining cards in my deck, and given that I still need to draw another 2 to meet the 6 total, I then pick up all the cards in my discard pile, shuffle them, convert those cards into my new deck, and proceed to draw 2 more cards so that I now have exactly 6 in my hand. Okay, back to the game. Seeing that it's the first turn of the first round, and we automatically start the game with 6 cards in our hand, during a card draw step, both Savannah and I each draw exactly 1 card from our respective decks. Next is turn step 2, draw from the challenge pile. The player who has the first go, which in this case is me as it's turn 1 and I'm player 1, draws a challenge. Let's take a look at what this challenge reads. It says, you achieve this challenge if and when the total power of one of your champions becomes plus 35 or greater at any point in the game after you put this card into play. So this is something I'm going to try and accomplish during the game, because if I do, I earn, as indicated on the card, plus 3 nobility points. We now enter the third turn step, roll for karma. The player who has the first go is designated to roll the karma reward die to determine how much karma each player has for the turn. In this case, I roll a 3, which means the total combined karma of the deployments I play this turn cannot exceed that number. Turn step 4. This is when the contest begins. Since I'm player 1 and have the first go, I now have the option to play a card from my hand to deploy a champion or rook to the realm. Seeing as how all I have are deployments at this point, I can play one of them provided it requires 3 or less karma to play. One thing to note is that during each player's go, they may play a maximum of 1 card from their hand, except during the last go of the turn, at which time this restriction doesn't apply. If that doesn't make total sense to you right now, don't worry, we'll show you what that means as we play. Alright, so I decide to play Lady Lynette, a pawn deployment which has a karma requirement of 0. So I still haven't used up any of my karma yet this turn. I then choose a pawn from my reserve and put it in the realm, as this pawn is a physical representation of the champion Lady Lynette throughout the turn. Just for the sake of interest, let's take a closer look at that card. The card reads, when you play this deployment, if one or more knights are in the realm, then draw a card from the blessing draw pile and put it into play on your side face down. Unfortunately, seeing that there are no knights in the realm yet, I don't draw a blessing, but I may have something up my sleeve. The next thing I do is make sure to mark the champion's total power with my power counter, which isn't all that much, it's just 1. And given that I've played my 1 maximum card this go, I signal to the other player that my go is ended and thus hers now begins. During Savannah's first go of this turn, she decides to play the deployment named Sir Galahad, and accordingly deploys that champion, symbolized by a knight she chooses from her reserve and puts into the realm. Here's one mechanism to note. If you're playing with the expansion, right after you play a knight or king deployment, that's when you draw a gift of providence and put it into play on your side face down. Here's what's written on the card. When you play this deployment, roll 7 6-sided destiny dice. If the total sum of all values showing on the dice is at least 24, then draw a card from the fate draw pile. If that card is the Holy Grail, then 1. You earn plus 5 nobility points, and 2. Remove this deployment from the game. So, as instructed, Savannah picks up her destiny dice, rolls, and she makes it. Now, let's pause the video here for a moment. Okay, so what is about to potentially arise here is, in essence, the most climactic and dramatic moment in the Arthurian legend. Galahad, alongside Percival and Sir Bors, receiving the most mystical and sought-after relic by the Knights of the Round Table. Now, there are 7 fates in total, which means Savannah has a 1 in 7 chance, in other words, 14% odds of drawing the Holy Grail. Now, at the risk of this looking completely staged, Savannah, in a stroke of unbelievably good luck, draws, as fate would have it, the Holy Grail. Here's what the card reads. When you draw this fate, 1. Reveal it to your rival. 2. Draw another card from the fate draw pile. 3. Return the Holy Grail to the fate draw pile. And 4. Shuffle that pile. All of which things Savannah does. So As per the instructions on the deployment Savannah played, for having drawn the Holy Grail in this instance, she earns +5 nobility points, and if that weren't enough, she also ends up with a fate in her hand. Oh, and that's not all. Remember at the beginning of the game when we were choosing our events, and I told you they take place when a certain scenario occurs during the game? Well, check this out. The event you see Savannah holding here reads as follows. If and when you draw the Holy Grail as a result of playing the deployment named Sir Galahad, which he did, then 1. Merlin builds the perilous seat takes place. 2. You earn an additional +3 nobility points. And 3. Put this event into your inactive card pile. And so accordingly, Savannah adds +3 on her nobility point counter and puts the event into her inactive card pile. So as we can see, Savannah has Sir Galahad, which is a knight, in the realm, whose total power is 9, and I have Lady Lynette, a pawn whose total power is just 1. So in this contest so far, Savannah definitely has the lead, and she's earned +8 nobility points already to my goose egg. Seeing as how she's played her maximum 1 card from her hand, Savannah signals to me that her go is ended, which means it's now my go again. During my second go of the turn, I decide to play Sir Owen. Here's what the card reads. When you play this deployment, roll 7 6-sided destiny dice without your rival seeing the outcome. After both you and your rival have knocked, I'll explain what that means later, and before the winner of the contest has been determined, reveal the outcome of the roll to your rival. Whatever the total sum is of all values showing on the dice, add that to Sir Owen's total power. If Lady Lynette is in the realm, which she is, then add an additional +25. So once I've chosen a knight from my reserve and put it in the realm to represent Sir Owen, and have added his current total power as stated on the card, which is 9, to my power counter, which now shows a total of 10, I then roll my 7 6-sided destiny dice, the total sum of which is 24, not bad, but in this case, I hide the dice from Savannah until later on. If you're wondering why, in this case my rival doesn't get to see the outcome of my roll, here's what inspired that detail. Well, that and why Owen's power increases when Lynette is in the realm. Oh yeah, and seeing as how I just played a knight, I mustn't forget to draw a Gift of Providence, which I put into play on my side face down. Well, I'd say that was a pretty good go for me. After I signal to my rival that I end my go, and hers begins again, she decides to not play any cards from her hand, which is communicated to the other player via a knock, and that tells me she forfeits the option to play any more cards from her hand for the remainder of the turn. In other words, her turn is done. Alright, back to the rule I touched on earlier about whoever has the last go in a turn. Given that I now have the last go this turn, for the remainder of the turn, I'm not bound by the 1 card maximum per go rule, which means I can play as many cards from my hand as I wish. That is, provided I have sufficient karma remaining to do so. Now, I've already used up my 3 karma reward, so it's depleted, but I could still potentially play, say, pawn deployments if I so wished, which don't have a karma requirement, or even a fate, if I had one. But it looks like I have this contest well in hand, so I knock as well, signaling to the other player that my turn is also done. Whoa, hold on a minute. Before we move on to the next step, remember what that knight deployment I played Sir Owen read? It said, after both you and your rival have knocked, which we have, and before the winner of the contest has been determined, reveal the outcome of the roll to your rival. So I proceed to do so accordingly, and both Savannah and I can see that I'm the winner of this turn's contest. Okay, we can show that title now. And after we've determined that I'm the winner. As such, I now choose my prize. And here's how that works. The winner of a contest chooses one of the following as their prize. They can either 1. Earn the nobility points that are equal to the nobility worth of their most valuable champion or rook in the realm, or 2. Capture one of the other player's champions or rooks in the realm. As you can see here, my knight has the highest nobility worth at 3 of all my champions in the realm, as opposed to my pawn, which is just 2. So for my prize, I could either choose to earn +3 nobility points, or I could choose to capture any of the other players' champions or rooks they have in the realm. Well, I end up choosing to capture Savannah's knight, and here's why. Any player at any point in the game may pay the ransom to rescue one or more of their captured champions or castles. When they do, and chances are Savannah's going to want her captured knight back, the other player earns the nobility worth of whatever piece the other player rescues, as well as an additional +2 nobility points. In other words, if Savannah pays the ransom to rescue her knight, I'll earn a total of +5 nobility points. So I think that's my best bet here. After the winner of the contest has collected their prize, both players do a sweep. That means all dice rolled are set aside, all deployments played, unless otherwise stated on the card, go into the respective discard piles, and all fates played, which we haven't this turn, are put back into the fate drop pile, which is then shuffled by either player. And as you can see, we're doing our sweep now. Savannah, of course, doesn't have a discard pile yet because the deployment she played has been removed from the game due to Sir Galahad's, as it were, ascension. Next, we do a challenge check to make sure we don't miss receiving the nobility points for any challenges we may have achieved. As it turns out, I was successful in achieving my first challenge this early on in the game due to the fact that Sir Owen's total power reached higher than +35. So I add +3 nobility points to my nobility point total, and because the challenge has been achieved, it goes into my inactive card pile. Alright, we now enter the final step of the turn if you're playing with the expansion, choosing one of your face down gifts of providence if you have any on your side and flipping it over. Most of them read as follows. You may at any point in the game put 3 face-up gifts of providence, if you have that many in play on your side, into your inactive card pile. If and when you do so, either add +2 to your total karma reward for the turn, or draw 2 cards from your deck. So playing your knights and king faster than your rival does could potentially give you a slight strategic advantage in that you may draw more gifts than they do throughout the game. As well, it increases your chances of drawing the mythic. Here are all 3 in the basic expansion. If you're interested in reading them more closely, you can visit the card gallery on our website. If you made it this far into the tutorial video, thanks so much, and we really appreciate it. And we hope that it immerses you not only in the game itself, but also the legend of King Arthur, which we love. Almost every card is inspired by a legendary figure and their story, or stories, as the case may be, as there are many variations and tellings. And I always try to reference or pay homage to them in some way, even if it's not literal. So I hope this tutorial gives you an authentic feel for the kind of experience this game has to offer and the kinds of interactions and scenarios that are possible. So far, we've pretty much covered most of the basic rules and mechanics you'll need to play the game, except how blessings and other fates besides the Holy Grail work, and maybe you'll even get to see a mythic. There are lots of other figures that come to life in this game, so we hope you stick around or fast forward to other parts that interest you so you can see these champions' uniqueness and how that's expressed, and hopefully how their essence is captured. So please enjoy. This turn, player 2 now has the first go, and we move the round counter to her side to remind us of that. I have 5 cards in my hand, so I draw until I have exactly 6, which is 1 card, and Savannah is holding 7, so she draws exactly 1 as well. As the player with the first go, Savannah draws her challenge and puts it into play on her side, face up. The card reads, "You achieve this challenge if and when you draw the Holy Grail at any point in the game, after, not before, you put this card into play on your side." Although she's already drawn the Holy Grail this game, that unfortunately doesn't count. But if and when she does again, that's good for +3 nobility points. Next, as Savannah has the first go this turn, she now rolls the Karma Reward die, and the result is 3 again. She proceeds to play the pawn deployment, the Princess of Cameliard, which reads, "When you play this deployment, if King Arthur is in the realm, then you earn +3 nobility points." Well, seeing that neither of us currently has our king in the realm, she sadly doesn't earn the +3 nobility points for playing that deployment. However, if I know Savannah, which I do, and if she knows the game half as well as I know she does, she's up to something. After my friendly rival has played her 1 card from her hand and signaled that it's my go, I play the pawn deployment Sir Galahad's Father, which reads, "When you play this deployment, draw a card from the Blessing draw pile and put it into play on your side face down. If Sir Galahad is in the realm, then draw another card from the Blessing draw pile and put it into play on your side face down." His total power is 5, not bad for a pawn, and given that its karma requirement is 0, I haven't used any of my karma yet for the turn. As for the blessings, I'll settle for drawing just the 1, as we won't be seeing Sir Galahad again this game, which is too bad. When you draw a blessing, you're allowed to read it as often as you like throughout the game. It stays face down until you flip it over, or as we say in the game, when you receive the blessing, at which time it takes effect. Here are some rules around blessings. The only time you may flip over a blessing is during your first go on any of your turns, and immediately before you play your first deployment or fate. That is, if you choose to at all. Also, you may flip over no more than 1 blessing per turn. So it's very important to remember that. Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about those. Thanks. So there are 2 exceptions, and here they are. So the card to the left reads, "You may flip over this blessing after you knock and before the end of your go." In other words, the only time you may receive this particular blessing is at that moment right after you knock, which, as you may remember, is when you signal to the other player that you forfeit the option to play any more cards from your hand for the remainder of the turn. And just before you go, which is your last go of the turn, ends, when the card continues. If and when you do so, and if you have any champions in the realm, then choose one of them. The chosen champion's power doubles. As for the one to the right, similarly, it reads, "You may flip over this blessing after you knock and before the end of your go. If and when you do so, and if you have King Arthur in the realm, then his total power triples." So these are potentially really powerful blessings and fun ones to play. So after I mark the power of Sir Galahad's Father, which is 5, I indicate to the other player that my go is over, as I've played my 1 card maximum from my hand, and so her go begins. With authority, Savannah plays Sir Gawain and deploys a knight to the realm accordingly. The deployment reads, when you play this deployment, Sir Gawain's total power is granted plus 20 until the end of turn for every other champion you have in the realm with lady, queen or queens, enchantress, princess, and or sister in their name. Well, since she has a Princess of Cameliard in the realm, Savannah adds plus 20 to Sir Gawain's power of 9, bringing his total power to plus 29. Factoring in the princess's total power of 1, the total combined power of both champions of the realm is now plus 30, and she draws her gift for having deployed a knight to the realm. I'd say Savannah delivered a strong play there and is definitely winning the contest so far. So during my next go, I respond by playing Sir Bors the Younger, another Grail Knight. That deployment reads, which is somewhat resemblant of Sir Galahad. When you play this deployment, roll 7 six-sided fortune dice. If the total sum of all values showing on the dice is at least 24, then draw a card from the fate draw pile. If that card is a Holy Grail, then 1. You earn plus 3 nobility points, and 2. Sir Bors the Younger's total power is granted plus 40 until the end of turn. I rolled a destiny dice, but regrettably my roll fell short of 24 by just 1. Well, at least I draw a gift and put it into play on my side face down for having played a knight deployment. Sir Bor's power is just plus 9, so the total combined power of my 2 champions in the realm is currently plus 14, which means Savannah's well ahead of me in this contest by 16 points. That's my 1 card from my hand, so it's your go, Savannah. Well, needless to say, my rival is feeling pretty confident she has this turn's contest in the bag. Plus, she's used all of her 3 karma. She does have a fate in her hand, but I think she'll save it for later on when she really needs it. So she knocks, which tells me that's her final go this turn, and she indicates to me that it's now my go. Even though I have the final go of the turn, which means I can play as many cards as I want for the remainder of the turn, if I have the karma, which I don't, and if I have the cards. There isn't much I can do at this point, so I too knock and admit defeat. That brings her contest to a close and Savannah triumphs. For her prize, she can either choose to earn the plus 3 nobility points, which is the nobility worth of her most valuable champion in the realm, her knight, or capture my knight. She makes the more aggressive move and opts to capture my knight. During my first go, I used 3 of my 5 available karma to deploy Sir Tristan to the realm. The deployment reads, when you play this deployment, your rival, who represents the giant Morholt, rolls 6 six-sided destiny dice, and you roll 7 six-sided destiny dice. If the total sum of all values showing on the dice you roll is higher than that of your rival, then Sir Tristan defeats Morholt, and his total power is granted plus 30 until the end of turn. So here, Savannah and I have what you might call a roll-off, although I have the advantage in that I roll 1 more die than she. With the odds stacked in my favor, the sum of my roll is 28 to Savannah's 17. So Sir Tristan, as in the legend, fells his foe, and his total power is now 39. I draw my Gift of Providence, and as I've played my 1 maximum card from my hand this go, I signal to my rival that it's now her go. Savannah uses 3 of her available karma as well, and plays Sir Lancelot, the Greatest Knight, which reads, when you play this deployment, 1. If your rival has any champions in the realm, then choose one of them, which in this instance is Sir Tristan, and roll 7 six-sided destiny dice. If the total sum of all values showing on the dice is at least 24, then your rival removes the chosen champion from the realm and returns that champion to the reserve. And 2. If Queen Guinevere is in the realm, then Sir Lancelot the Greatest Knight's total power is granted plus 25 until the end of turn. Luck being well on her side tonight, Savannah rolls higher than 24, and so I begrudgingly remove Sir Tristan from the realm and put away the power counter, as I no longer have any champions in the realm. Unfortunately, neither of us has Queen Guinevere in the realm, so Sir Lancelot the Greatest Knight's power stays at 5, but I'd say his presence has had an important impact that I, forgive my profanity, sure as Hades felt. Well, during my next go with only 2 remaining karma available to me, I know I've been bested, and so I gracefully knock, forfeiting the option to play any more cards this turn, and thus bringing my turn to an end. Although she still has 2 karma left, Savannah knows she's won this contest and knocks as well, seeing as how I don't have any champions or rooks in the realm for her to capture. As the clear winner of the contest, my rival chooses to earn the nobility points equal to her knight's nobility point worth, which is 3. Oh, just as an interesting sidebar, see that card I was holding there? That's the deployment I was hoping to play, Lady Isolda. If you wouldn't mind obliging me here for just a moment, let's take a look at that card so you can see why I'm feeling a bit bitter. It reads, when you play this deployment, if Sir Tristan is in the realm, which he certainly was, then his total power doubles. That means Sir Tristan's total power would have been an impressive 78. Thanks to Savannah, you didn't get to see that glorious moment happen. Oh well, Tristan and Isolda were star-crossed lovers, and their story was tragic anyway, so maybe it's for the best they never met. Can you pass the sour grapes, please? After we do our sweep, we each flip over 1 gift. We each now possess 3 face-up gifts, meaning we can at any time in the game put those into our inactive card pile and trade them in either to draw 2 cards or add 2 to our total karma reward in any turn. Round 2, turn 2. I have 5 cards in my hand, so I draw 1, and Savannah has 6, so she draws 1 also. Player 2 now has the first go. As such, Savannah draws a challenge and puts it into play on her side face up, before rolling the karma reward die, which results in a 2. Now, as you may recall, whenever 2 is rolled for karma, the roller may either keep the karma reward at 2 for the turn, or roll again, which she decides to do, and this time 6 is the outcome. Savannah wastes no time in trading in her 3 gifts of providence to draw 2 cards from her deck. If any player chooses not to play any cards from their hand during their go, then they must knock, thus ending their turn. But Savannah uses 3 of her 6 available karma to play another knight deployment, thus keeping her turn alive, and she deploys to the realm a knight to symbolize Sir Balin. This is an interesting one, and here's what the card reads. When you play this deployment, roll 7 6-sided destiny dice. If the total sum of all values showing on the dice is at least 24, then 1. Sir Balin's total power is doubled, and 2. Repeat this process until either the total sum of all values showing on the dice you roll is less than 24, or Sir Balin's total power is 160 or greater. Put this deployment into your inactive card pile. My rival draws her gift for having played a knight, and then is successful in getting the roll she needed for Sir Balin's total power of 20 to be doubled, so it's now 40, and she's not done yet. She gets to roll the destiny dice yet again, but sadly, this time the total sum falls short of 24, so her dice rolling for Sir Balin's power ends. That said, a knight having a total power of 40 is nothing to sneeze at. As for my next go, I deploy Sir Lamorak to the realm, whose power of 9 gains plus 25 because my rival has exactly 1 knight in the realm. It would have been plus 50 if she had an additional knight in the realm, but I'm happy to settle for 34. One thing I should point out here is, it took 4 knights to ambush and gang up on Lamorak in an unfair battle that lasted hours in order to take him down. And it was ultimately Mordred who gave him his death blow by stabbing him in the back. Anyway, I dropped my gift. One side note is, I noticed it just so happens that for whatever reason during this game, we've been playing mostly knights so far, but you'll get to see other kinds of Arthurian figures in action as the game goes on. After I indicate to my rival opposite me that it's now her go, she uses her 3 remaining karma to play yet another knight deployment and deploy Sir Bedivere to the realm. So when you play this card, you roll the destiny dice, and if they add up to 24 or higher, then you get to search the fate draw pile for Excalibur. Then you're faced with a dilemma. You can either keep Excalibur, which is, as you'd expect, a rather powerful card that enhances one of your knight's power by plus 45, or your king by plus 50. Not too shabby. Or you can return it to the fate draw pile and shuffle it to receive plus 5 nobility points. This agonizing decision is meant to mirror that which Sir Bedivere faces according to lore. Savannah's roll is successful, and so she searches and finds what is arguably the most iconic sword in history and legend. So what will she choose? Will it be power and deny King Arthur's dying wish to return the sword from whence it came, or nobility? Well, I'm proud to say she does the honorable thing and chooses the latter, which earns her plus 5 nobility points. So if I make the destiny roll for King Ban's son, which I do, I get to search the fate pile for any fate, which is the Knights of the Round Table, and put it into my hand. The card reads, when you play this fate, if you have any knights, Sir Brunor, Sir Dagonet, and or King Arthur in the realm, then the total power of each one of them, except Sir Balin, is granted plus 30 until the end of turn. Here's a side note. The reason Balin doesn't qualify here is, well, if you remember, he tragically died before the Round Table was established. So why are Brunor and Dagonet included? Well, because they both eventually join the Round Table, as they do in the legend. If we look at their deployments, these cards tell us that whenever you deploy Brunor and or Dagonet to the realm subsequent to the first time, they become Sir Brunor and Sir Dagonet respectively, which means if you have them in the realm and you play the Knights of the Round Table, then that fate applies to them as well as the other knights and king that you have in the realm. Okay, let's pause for a moment to look at that event named the Great Tournament I chose before the game, which reads, if and when you play the Knights of the Round Table, then 1. The Great Tournament takes place, and 2. Add an additional plus 50 to the number indicated on that fate. So that means if I were to play that fate during, say, my next go, then Lamrak's power of plus 34 will be granted plus 80, and King Ban's sons of plus 7 will also be granted plus 80 for a grand combined total of a remarkable 201, if my calculus is correct. With the stakes getting higher, my rival plays the pawn deployment Brunor, who has a power of all but 1. So why would she do that? The answer, strategy. See, she's anticipating that I'm going to play the Knights of the Round Table fate, so she plays essentially a throwaway card so that she doesn't have to knock, and thus she keeps her turn alive. Well, during my next go, it's a no-brainer. I play with bravado and panache, to no one's surprise, the Knights of the Oh no. Foiled again, folks, I'm afraid. In a twist of fate, my daughter rival plays the only counter fate and the only card in the set that can be played during the other player's go, and that card is Merlin Finds Baby Yoda. I mean Arthur. The card reads, you may play Merlin Finds Baby Arthur during your rival's go if and when they play a fate. If you do so, then that fate played by your rival has no effect, and its instructions are ignored. Well, seeing as how I've played my one card from my hand, which in the end was neutralized and had absolutely no impact whatsoever on this contest, I have no choice but to indicate to player 2, who evidently brought her cutthroat A-game to humble her father and creator of this game in front of all you fine folks, that it's now her go. By the way, that delightfully enchanting song you just heard and all the others you're enjoying in this video are by Sergio, aka Random Mind. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel if you'd like to hear those soothing medieval fantasy songs without my scratchy voice interrupting them. And Sergio, wherever you may be, somewhere in Poland I reckon, thanks for making and sharing such alluring music. Okay, now let's take a closer look at that sublime mythic and see if it lives up to the hype I've been giving it. Inscribed on the card are these words. When you flip over this mythic, which my daughter adversary has, it remains in play until the end of game. Right before you play any cards from your hand during the last turn of the game, you may choose to call upon King Arthur's barge. If and when you do so, 1. Knock over your king. 2. You may not play your king deployment for the remainder of the game, well, because in this scenario, he's mortally wounded and has either arrived in Avalon or is being taken there. And 3. You earn +7 nobility points. The highest one-time allotment of nobility points any card in the set gives a player. I think by now you got the gist of how this game is played, so from here on out, I'm going to just go over some highlights during each turn. After a card draw step and player 2 rolled 5 for a karma reward, drew her challenge, which she put into play on her side face up, and deployed Queen Guinevere with a power 15, which used up all of her 5 available karma for the turn. My rival, as per the deployment's instructions, then searched the blessing pile, chose one to her liking, and put it into play on her side face down. Unfortunately for Savannah, she doesn't succeed in getting the destiny dice roll she wanted, which would have granted Guinevere an additional plus 25 power. Okay, it's now my go. See that blessing that I've been saving thus far into the game? Well, if I want to receive that blessing, now's the time to flip it over, which is during my first go on any turn before I play any cards from my hand. And flip it over is exactly what I do. The blessing reads, when you flip over this blessing, if your rival has any of your captured pawns, bishops, and or knights, then choose one of them. Return the chosen champion to your reserve. Feeling nothing short of exalted, I rescue my brave knight from captivity and return him to my reserve.